And go ahead.
All right, welcome to the debate. We have two representatives of the candidates. We have Robert Sanders representing Bernie Sanders, and we have Bryson Pittman representing Joe Biden. We're going to start out on the issue of healthcare. Vice President Biden, one of the biggest. Okay, you're done. One of the biggest distinctions between the two candidates.
Is that
Okay, Infinite, you're done.
You're so dumb.
What did I say?
Steven for president. Steven for president. Steven for president. Steven for president. Draft, Brian. Draft, Brian. Draft.
You picked Infinite. No. Wow.
So, if you want to sit here and you want to be respectful and you
Continue
want to
on.
listen,
If you guys want to be in this call, you have to mute your mics. Continue on, Ben. Go ahead, Ben. Okay. Well,
Luca.
Jacob, why did you kick Ben?
Because he kicked my alt that was in the call.
I gave the kid the link to the call. But I guess the call's full.
Ben, you can stop kicking people. It's the taste of your own medicine. It's a just.
Jacob, you kick me, it will be the end of
Hey,
you.
Jacob, I would like
Already
to say, we're still
Everyone mute.
Jacob, I have a question. Are we still part of the Bad Cat Union together?
The what?
everyone
The
mute.
Bad Cat
Everyone
Union?
mute. Bryson, you ready for this?
Mute.
Ready.
Okay, you're all in your last warning. All right.
Here, we'll just create a separate chat.
Okay, you guys.
Ben,
don't
Ben, add me to a separate chat, and then we can continue the live. And just add me and Bryson.
Meow. Jacob.
What?
Does anyone else want to be like a quiet listener in the call?
No, nobody else is
No,
coming.
Robert.
Jacob, turn on your camera. What the fuck?
Oh my god.
You know this is gonna be on YouTube, right?
No!
It's live on YouTube right now.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh, yeah. Dude, there are literally 20 people watching. Oh my gosh.
But
Okay.
Wait, is this live?
I'm joining the actual debate call. You should too, Bryson. Okay. Now we're gonna restart. Here we go. Hello? Bryson? Ben? Hello?
Test. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Everybody, Bryson, can you talk? Can you talk, Bryson?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
All right. Ready to go? Tell me when we're ready.
Whenever you want to. We've been live this entire time, so.
Okay. Great. All right, we'll start off on the issue of healthcare. One of the biggest distinctions between the candidates here is that Vice President Biden does not support a universal government-run health insurance program like Medicare for All. He supports maintaining the private insurance system, but adding Medicare-like public option that anyone could sign up for. A proposal that still goes well beyond the Affordable Care Act. He estimates his plan would cost $750 billion over a decade. Vice President Biden, why is your plan superior to Medicare for All?
Well, it's superior because of the reason that it doesn't take something away from the American people. If you take away private insurance and people's options to do bargain, to have private plans, have it their way, you create the sense that the government doesn't want you to have any specific civil freedoms to do as you please with your own plan. The Democratic Party has never been the party of taking away anything from the American people, whether it was civil rights, civil freedoms, economic opportunity, justice, equality. We've always been the party of giving instead of taking. So I believe that the public option is the best option for this time and this moment in time, because if we simply go over to something that we don't have any knowledge of, that we've never experimented with, how do we expect it to affect us as a people? How do we expect it to affect the deficit and our U.S. currency for the long term? We have to think about the long term, because if we spend over $750 billion on Medicare for all, it will greatly impact our kids and grandkids. So the safest choice would be a public option with good guaranteed lower costs, and still the opportunity to have private insurance with lower prescription drug costs. That is the best opportunity we have for this moment. Can we move towards universal? Yes, we can. But now is the best time to stick with something we know that will work instead of something we have no knowledge of.
All right. Thank you. Senator Sanders, you have a rebuttal.
Thank you. No, I'm kidding. I won't do that. um, yes. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I do believe in a Medicare for all single-payer option. I believe in creating a Medicare for all single-payer national health insurance program to provide to everyone in America with comprehensive health care coverage free at the point of service. No networks, no premiums, no deductibles, no copays, and no surprise bills. Medicare coverage will be expanded and improved to include dental, hearing, vision, and home and community-based long-term care, inpatient and outpatient services, mental mental health and substance abuse treatment, reproductive and maternity care, prescription drugs, and much more included in this comprehensive package. Excuse me. It will also stop the pharmaceutical industry from ripping off the American people by making sure that no one in America pays over $200 a year for the medicine they need by capping what Americans pay for in prescription drugs under Medicare for All. The public option bill that Mr. Vice President, the Mr. Vice President has proposed caps those same drugs at only $1,000 and caps copays and premiums at $1,500. We get rid of all of that unnecessary waste in the system. We spend nearly $500 billion a year on administrative costs alone. The public option and Medicare for all who want it, these uh, milk toast options keep that $500 billion a year waste program that the government is running operational. It's much more efficient. It's a much more efficient program because instead of having to administer hundreds of different private programs, we administer for the basic stuff one insurance program uh, under, under Medicare, under the Medicare title, that would be run efficiently and effectively. And I'm sure that Mr. Pittman's going to talk about choice and taking away something from the American people, but it's actually giving the American people something. It's giving them the choice of their healthcare provider. It's giving them a choice of doctor and hospital, uh, something that they do not currently have. Unfortunately, in other debates, Mr. Vice President has displayed a lack of understanding on what networks are and what the private insurance companies do
All right.
with networks. We'll go into that with my next answer, but we have a lot to talk about in terms of healthcare industry, and we are the only campaign that covers every single American in a clear, concise way that is paid for.
All right.
Can I get a rebuttal?
Yes, a brief one.
Yeah, he's right that his campaign goes bold, but he doesn't mention that he does it at the expense of the American taxpayer, and he still to this day hasn't explained in full detail how he will pay for this costly plan. And here's the concern with Medicare for all, and government analysts and experts all around agree. They're concerned that the government may not be able to use bargaining power to drive down costs as steeply as the senator would want. And the aspect of the bill, it says it would do zero out of pocket costs. And look, it wouldn't work. Drew Altman from the Kaiser Family Foundation. That he said, and I quote, "No other nation will develop zero out-of-pocket costs." And I really want to understand the senator, and I want to really believe that he has the nation's and the people's best interests at heart. But the simple fact of the matter is, he can't even explain to us how he's going to make sure that the
Thank you.
taxpayer isn't costed more than his plan really does. So we
Thank
need
you.
to really get real here and stop with these fairy tale
Well, I want the
lines that he
American
throws out
Thank
every time he gets a chance.
Thank you.
I want the American people
A
to
quick rebuttal for Senator Sanders.
I want the American people to notice how he said experts instead of saying specific studies. I can cite specific studies. I can cite a number of them, like the Mercatus Foundation, which is a right-wing study that found that Medicare for all would save around $20 billion compared to the public option plan. I can cite the Yale study that showed Medicare for all would save the federal government alone $500 billion a year by ending the administrative costs. And it showed pretty clearly in every single study that's been done, even the ones that show Medicare for all would only save around $5 trillion, shows that Medicare for all would save money. It shows that Medicare for all would be able to bring those costs down. And I actually brought up real specific studies. And I want you to notice how my opponent just said experts, which is quite interesting. And there's just no foundation to the argument that Medicare for all would not be able to eliminate copays, premiums, and deductibles because these three quote unquote
Thank you.
inventions. Let me finish my point. These three quote unquote inventions are made by the private insurance companies. They are not meant to be permanent in a society. They are not inherent in a society. They are not inherent in our economic system. Um, and it's far past time that we move past paying these terrible copays, premiums, and deductibles. In my next answer, I want to move on to the tax part of it because he did attack that as well. But there's a lot to respond to when Mr. Vice President talks.
Yeah, and we're going to continue to talk about it. We're going to talk about the affordability of your plans as well. And this one goes to Senator Sanders. Your plan, you estimate that your plan would cost about $30 trillion over 10 years. And it would be paid for by new revenue of about 17.5 trillion, along with current federal and local and states government funding. Um, the vice president has said that that's not going to work. What is your rebuttal to that, and how can you ensure that the American people are going to be taken off of their health care without a plan that can be properly paid for?
Well, um, first of all, Medicare for all is paid for by a slight increase in the payroll tax for employees. An employer payroll. Okay. An employer payroll tax increase, slight, But both of those, and those are the only two tax increases for the middle class, and anyone making below $36,000 a year is exempt from those tax raises. So let's just be clear about that. And second, those tax raises are offset by the elimination of the wasteful costs. The wasteful costs such as premiums, copays, and deductibles. For example, the average family making around $60,000 a year pays around $12,000 a year for healthcare. Under Medicare for All, guaranteed, they would pay $1,200 a year, or $1,200 uh, monthly for healthcare, and that is, or sorry, $1,200 a year for healthcare, including the raised taxes. That is a significant benefit. Uh, it's a tax cut essentially for Americans. It's just we're cutting private taxes that people are paying to corporations, and giving them back the money that is being used for wasteful purposes. Um, we and all of that together, the payroll tax and the elimination of the wasteful spending, and the extra costs being paid for by those two revenue streams, that pays for the entire program, the $30 trillion, and it's about $1.5 trillion a year. Those two revenue streams generate $1.5 trillion a year. The 10-year number is a little bit arbitrary because the federal government looks at things from a yearly
Ooh.
federal funding perspective, and that's what we've done with Mr. The Vice President's plan. He said that his plan costs $700 billion a year. That's true. That's okay, good. But we have to
All
be
right.
honest and clear. My plan costs $1.5 trillion a year. The average American will be paying significantly less, and we have funded that $1.5 trillion. We're not going bankrupt.
Thank you.
The deficit would actually be reduced under my plan.
Thank you.
Rebuttal.
Is there a response?
Yeah. I have a question for the senator. What increase in the payroll tax would it be by percentage?
It varies on your based on your income. I don't have my platform right in front of me, so I couldn't tell you the exact percentage. But say you make $36,000 a year, you'd pay a very low. There'd be a near insignificant increase in your payroll tax. It's a progressive raise in the payroll tax. So if you're a richer person making say $200,000 a year on the payroll, which isn't many people, but it's a decent portion of the economy in most places, then you would pay a decent portion of the payroll tax. But again, even if you are paying a decent portion of the payroll tax, it'd be less than you are currently paying in total for your healthcare costs. So you can say that your taxes are going to be raised,
All right.
and yes, that is true, but they will.
And that's a problem.
Why is that a problem? You would
That's
rather
a problem,
hold on,
Senator.
hold on.
All right.
Can I just ask him this question? Why would it be better for you to pay more money for private insurance when you're locked in certain networks, uh, rather than to pay less money for going to any healthcare provider, any doctor whatsoever? $1,200 a year as opposed to $12,000 a year. I don't see why that's a problem.
Well, I don't see what's the problem with a public option, which doesn't raise taxes at all.
It doesn't eliminate the
Senator Sanders,
administrative costs.
let him answer.
Yeah, well, I'm talking, and I'm telling you, I don't understand the reasoning of your plan because here's the problem at the edge. It might not seem a lot for the ordinary to you, Senator, because you're from Vermont. It might not seem a lot to you, but to that ordinary working family in, let's say, Brunswick, Georgia, or Dallas, Texas, it may not seem like a lot to you, but it seems like a lot to them because you're talking about the money that they earn as an employee, and you're talking about raising the payroll tax, which obviously shouldn't be even necessary to guarantee you good health care. And that's the basis and the problem with Medicare for All, because you're raising taxes on the average American to gamble with something you haven't even experienced. And I can tell you, from studies in other countries, let's say Italy, they experimented with Medicare for all,
A
and they're not
specific
doing so
study.
good right now. So
Well,
first,
We're
I
gonna get
really don't
in.
understand their basis unless it's I don't know who your advisors are, but they obviously don't have you prepared for this argument because if they
well,
did, they would let you look at the metrics in other countries where they have experimented with this, and they
We're
can tell
going.
you that it hasn't gone well.
We're going to. We're going to move on
no.
shortly.
Let me respond to that.
After I was just going to say after Senator Sanders gets a chance to rebuttal,
So
we're gonna move on quick.
you lack a basic. So in your argument that nobody should be paying any taxes whatsoever because they're a burden on the people. So the taxes that we pay to the firefighters, it's a burden. We should be paying more money to private companies so that people don't have to pay that money to the government, even though the government is much more efficient than the private sector, especially in the healthcare industry. What is the most popular what is the most popular insurance program in the country? It's Medicare. That's a government-run insurance program that helps people get literally any healthcare provider they want to. Medicare now, because it has to compete with the private insurance industry, has to have networks, but under Medicare for all, those networks are eliminated. Nobody, you'd be very hard pressed to find a single person that would say, "I love Blue Cross Blue Shield," or "I love any of the private insurance healthcare industries." People love their doctors. People love their nurses, their healthcare providers, their hospitals. And under Medicare for all, you can choose what doctor you go to, what hospital you go to, what nurse you see, what healthcare provider you get, and choose how you get your healthcare. This will help rural areas immensely. It will remove nearly $20,000 in costs per person for businesses, making businesses pay hundreds of thousands of dollars less, especially the larger businesses that are driving the economy in the coastal areas. There's so many benefits, and the fact that you can't see past the payroll tax
Thank you.
raise when overall people would be paying nearly
Thank you.
$9,000 less in overall costs is a little ridiculous, and I think anyone who would watch this debate sees that ridiculous already. Sorry, it's just
No, they see the
That's
ridiculous revolution. That's what they see.
all right. Sen- okay, we're going to move on. We're going to move on past healthcare. I want to thank everybody, both of you, for that spirited discussion. Um, we are now going to move on uh, to the issue of education. Um, Mr. Biden wants to make 2-year community colleges and other high quality training programs debt free, but he would not cancel any existing student debt the way that Senator Sanders is proposing. Senator Sanders wants to make all public colleges and universities free, cancel all student loan debt, about 1.6 trillion owed by about 45 million Americans, and cap student loan interest rates at 1.88%. Senator Sanders, how do you expect to pay for this?
well. First things first, we're going to guarantee tuition and debt-free public colleges, universities, HBCUs, minority-serving institutions, and trade schools to every American in this country. We're going to also invest $1.3 billion every year in private and nonprofit historically black colleges and universities and minority serving institutions as a subset of that same program. We're going to end the equity gaps in higher education attainment and ensure students are able to cover non-tuition costs by attending school by expanding Pell Grants to cover non-tuition and fee costs. We're going to be tripling funding for the work study program and more. We pay for this by making Wall Street, who got bailed out to the tune of $22 trillion at zero interest loans, pay the American people back through a 0.001% to 0.5% tax on Wall Street speculations. It's a pretty simple tax that is speculation tax that is implemented throughout the world. And the fact that America doesn't have it means, I mean, it's led to a number of recessions in our past. The lack of this tax. And the speculation of people's money is something that needs to be taxed to ensure it's reining in on Wall Street. So essentially, we are reining in Wall Street, making them pay back the American people, and reducing the debt that is crushing the youth generation, making them unable to uh, participate in the opportunities offered to them by their respective states, or own a house or start a family. And this is negatively affecting the economy, as we're having the working generation, those who are able to have a house, support a family, and have all the money, the older generations, as they are dying off. There's a crisis going on. Because the generations that are supposed to be replacing them have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and are not able to uh, pay off that debt until they're in their late 50s. This is a societal crisis. And when we made high school available for free, that's because the labor force required a high school degree. Now the labor force requires a college degree, and it's far past time that we make public higher education institutions free for all Americans, so every American can participate in the economy to the best of their ability, and so every American can uh,
Thank you.
achieve their greatest goals, and it only costs in total to the tune of 75 to 80 billion dollars, and we've bailed out
Thank you.
companies and institutions far more than that.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Vice President Biden, your response.
Yeah. On another issue, me and Senator Sanders have some agreement with, because we all want to make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to go to college and get a good quality education and be whatever they want to be. However, I can tell you that someone like Barron Trump will not be going to any college for free. That will not be happening under my plan. That's not how we roll. America is not built on getting free handouts. It's built on working your way up, but also having assistance from the government when necessary and when vital to you. We advocate for just reducing student loan debt and also making community colleges free to go to and access for all, and also making sure that we use the tools of the Department of Education, which is not being used now. We actually use the tools to help people pay back student loan debt, and also help them get a hand up so that they don't be stifled with debt when they graduate. That shouldn't happen to anybody in this country, especially if you have passion for something you want to do in your life. You should be able to not be restrained by debt. So I fundamentally disagree, but somehow we should guarantee free college for everybody, regardless of income, because he didn't know. You notice he didn't say free college for low income. He just says free college. And although that is nice and cute, and if in a perfect world with the rainbows gleam and the heavens open, that would be all nice. But we live in a reality where everything is not free, and you actually have to earn your say in this country. So while I agree on the principle of making sure everybody gets a hand up, we don't need to be trying to help Trump's kids and future grandkids get a free college way ahead. We need to help low income people get a hand up and help them get free education and help them reduce student loans.
All right, Senator Sanders.
Well,
If you'd like a quick rebuttal,
yeah. Well,
but
his
we're gonna have to move on.
response to me wanting universal education is saying that we shouldn't provide universal programs to the rich. That's his argument. So by that same argument, we shouldn't be providing firefighter coverage to the rich. They can pay for their own private fire service. We shouldn't be paying for the police for the rich. The police, they can provide their own. They can buy their own security force. We shouldn't
That
be.
has nothing to do with this. That
It's
has
your
nothing to do with what we were
principal
talking
argument.
about.
All right.
I don't. If you don't
It
understand
has nothing what we would do, what
Okay.
we were talking about,
Vice
Senator.
President, we're gonna let the senator.
If you don't
finish, get a chance
understand
to
the principle of your argument, then I'm sorry, but
You
that's
have
just
to be a
how.
police
All right.
officer. There is no special police for the rich.
There's security forces, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're gonna get a chance to respond.
Thank you.
Continue.
We shouldn't, and it's the same argument that was used against providing high school to the high school to all Americans when that was being deliberated on in the 50s. We mustn't allow these disingenuous arguments to stop us from achieving our truest dreams. I think anyone at home watching this debate understands that a 0.05% tax on stock speculations on Wall Street, making Wall Street pay us back for the $21 trillion zero interest loan that the American people paid them out for, uh, is pretty easily gonna be spent, or it's pretty common sense to spend that money, subsequently spend that money on an $80 billion investment in public colleges, universities, and tuitions. I mean, I see no problem with allowing some rich kid to go to that public college if he so chooses, but I also find it quite unlikely
Oh,
that
Thank
Barron
you.
Trump would choose to go to a public university because they are rich and they do have that
Thank you.
opportunity to go to a
talking
Harvard. So,
about taking on the special
Thank
elite.
you.
Talk about taking on the special
and
interests
then
and the
he
special
and then
elite.
somehow he
All right.
says that his plan is the one that helps the low income
You're
people.
contradicting yourself.
All right.
You're
Okay. We're
contradicting
gonna.
yourself.
Okay.
It's just not true.
Vice. Okay. Vice President Biden. If you
Yeah, well, uh,
quick response.
yeah, well, you talk about the special interests, you talk about taking on Wall Street, but you want a rich kid to get free college? Is that what you're saying?
No, I
That
want a
that doesn't
universal
add
program.
up. No, no. Still, that doesn't add up, Senator. You're contradicting your statements every time you talk because you can't have
Well,
it,
it's just
but with
called a
both
universal
ways.
program, sure.
No, you can't have it both ways. And as much as you want to
Mm,
just keep
it's
on, you
not
can't
both
have
ways. It's a
it both
universal
ways.
All
program.
right.
It is both ways.
Uh,
It is both
all
ways
right.
because you want to take on the special interests in the wealthy and the powerful elites and the oligarchy, and I quote, but you want to also allow somebody like Barron Trump to go to college. I'm glad we're so clear on that because that just exposed how much of a contradicting
Okay.
All right.
politician you are,
Okay.
sir.
We're gonna move on because we've devoted enough time for this issue, considering the time that we have left. We're going to move on to the issue of abortion. Um, Senator Sanders has steadfastly been in support of abortion. Vice President Biden, while you support abortion, uh, you are pro-choice now. This hasn't been your steadfast position over your 50-year career. You've swung back and forth multiple times on this issue. When you became a senator in 1973, you argued that the Supreme Court had gone too far in its Roe v. Wade ruling, and you have voiced support of the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits federal funding for abortion under programs like Medicaid up to as recently as June 5th of this past year. How can voters trust that you will protect abortion rights if you have been swinging back and forth on this issue as recently as this year? That's for Vice President Biden.
And now he's silent.
As you stated, I have been in a constant back and forth because I am of faith of Catholic faith, and I believed in a long time ago. I had very back in those times. I had traditional views when it came to abortion, gay marriage, you name it. But now I think in these present times that I realize now that now more than ever we need to protect the woman's right to choose and to make her own health decisions. And in fact, I'm committing to put pro-choice judges on the Supreme Court, federal benches, because Republicans are attacking women's fundamental right to do what I'm sure if this was a man, Republicans would have no problem with it. So what I promise that I will do is codify Roe v. Wade in the federal law and make it the law of the land permanently. That's my first step as
But
president. That's
but
what I want. Uh,
Vice President Biden, if I may interrupt, um, but how? Just to directly answer my question, how can voters trust that you won't swing back on this issue? Because as recently as last year, you were in support of the Hyde Amendment, and now you say that you aren't.
and I am not. And here's thing about the Hyde Amendment that I know a lot of people like to talk about because try to get me in the gotcha question. That back in those days, and it kind of still was in the early 2013s. It was used in budgets as a trick to get senators on the record on this issue of federal funding for abortions. Back then, I used to always take the easy
You
way.
openly advocated for and wrote a
I'm
piece of
talking.
that
I'm
provision.
talking. I'm talking.
Let's get a
You don't
fact
have the
check on
luxury
that.
to interrupt me. I'm talking.
Senator
Yeah,
Sanders, you'll
well,
get a
yeah,
chance to
I'm
respond.
talking. Yeah. Not your turn, Senator.
Oh, you need a
And
cookie?
as I'm not your turn, still not your turn.
Hey, candidates, if you could please not interrupt, it'd
Yeah.
be appreciated.
Anywho, like I was saying, it was always proposing budgets to make sure that they got caught and gotcha questions. And sadly enough, I fell for it on some occasions I did. But now all I can tell you, I promise to Democratic primary voters, and I promise to women all across America, if I'm president, I will protect your right to choose and your right to make your own health decisions at all costs. And I will, and you can laugh all you want, but it's the truth, something you can't accept. But anyway, all I know is that I will be a pro-choice president, and I will
Oh, he does
protect a
need a
woman's right to
cookie. He does
choose.
need a cookie. Okay, well, look,
Um,
the facts are, and I think anybody at home can fact check this for themselves. You can find the vice president when he was a senator standing on the Senate floor and advocating for the Hyde Amendment directly. He did not just vote for this and, oh, I didn't read that, as he's trying to say now. Oh, they stuffed it in a bill and I didn't read it. I never got caught in that. Most other progressive senators who's been pro-choice their entire life never got caught in that. And this isn't the only flip-flop that the vice president has had. On the Iraq War, when you voted and supported and advocated for that war on the Senate for nearly 10 hours. I think it's something like that. We can get a fact check on that. Where you supported and advocated for and wrote um, terrible pieces of legislation or terrible provisions in an omnibus crime bill that led to mass incarceration. Granted, I did vote for that legislation because it had the Violence Against Women Act in it, but I stood on the but unlike you, I stood on the House floor and advocated against hard those provisions that you wrote and advocated for on the Senate floor. You called for a unilateral strike against North Korea in a speech. You praised your work on building the fences and the cages that the Trump administration is now using to lock up children and separate families. I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President, but no matter how many apologies or equivocations you cannot erase your record, and I'm sorry you're forgetting it. I know that it's hard getting old, but you cannot erase the record that you hold. The American people can go on the YouTube at home, they can see it for themselves, and they can see that you are making contradictory statements throughout this entire debate. And then you call me a contradictorian when it's clear that I've remained honest and true throughout this entire debate.
Borrow
And
my heart is
all
stronger
right.
than yours.
and
Borrow my heart.
this is about a general election argument.
Borrow my heart,
When you
Senator,
go
is stronger
against
than
Trump and
yours.
when you go against Trump and you try to make
Vice President.
arguments against him for immigration, and he
Mm-hmm.
can point out
Yeah.
that you once in your career said that we need a wall, or when you try to go against him against abortion and say that he's wrong for that, and then he can point out that you once in your career were also pro-life, or pro a segregationist, or pro name anything, pro-war, so on and so forth. When Donald Trump can run to the left of you, you know you have a problem. That's just not the case with me, and we will not lose
Vice
against Donald Trump.
Oh, let me respond to this one,
President
please.
And
Biden.
I know we'll
Okay.
get called a
First,
socialist in this response, I'm sure.
All
well,
right.
But
Let's
you
just
the
are,
okay.
American people
well,
know the facts.
Candidates.
on that light note, you are a socialist, and I'm glad you, I'm glad you admitted that. I'm glad you brought that up because you are a socialist, which is a
Can you
problem
define socialism?
because you had a
Okay,
honeymoon.
candidates. If we
I
could,
define
okay,
socialism as having a
can I
love
just,
affair with Fidel
can I
Castro in
just,
your
can
office.
I just say,
You,
No, the,
look,
yeah.
please not. Okay, Senator, let's please not interrupt each other. You're all going to get a chance to speak on this issue.
Well,
Let's not interrupt.
I'm
It just makes it
curious. You should
unwatchable.
ask him if he can
Well,
define
I'm
socialism.
talking.
Senator,
Well, it's my turn
Senator,
to talk, so it's not your turn.
I
This is not your time, so I'm
undoubtedly
going to
can do
reclaim
that, but
mine.
I don't think he can.
Senator.
Okay. Anywho, okay, yeah. Since you brought up the socialist point, yeah, because when you were mayor of Vermont, you invited Fidel Castro, a murderous dictator, to your front
Not true.
doorstep, and you welcomed him with honor, and you embraced him. Oh, it is true. You know it is. You honeymooned with him. You honeymooned there with Jane. You know you did.
That's not true.
And all I gotta say is, first of all, if you want to talk about what we did so long ago, those were old votes that matched those times. Because, and first off, with the crime bill, we were talking about the late 80s, Senator, the late 80s. The crack epidemic was alive and well. People were dying, and crime was on the rise, whether you believe it or not, whether you know it or not. And why did you vote for that bill? You want to throw
Because of the
out about
Violence Against
the
Women
Violence
Act.
Against Women Act. Yeah, that's bull, because we
Now,
all know that if you did, no, I'm talking. We all know
Senator,
if
you'll
it
get a
did.
chance.
We all know that if you voted against that bill, your constituents of Vermont would have kicked you out, because back then crime was on the rise and everybody was scared. And you can't deny this. Everybody was scared of what was going on. So they probably would have kicked you out, because Vermont, believe it or not, was kind of conservative back then, which I don't know why they was conservative and they voted for a socialist, but they were kind of conservative on the moderate side. And you know what? I think you took that vote for that reason, whether you want to admit it or not. So anyway, you want to go against my past record when you can't even own up to your own, because every time we bring up your votes against the Brady Bill, or your vote to go to the war with Afghanistan, or we bring up your past at Fidel Castro, or we bring up anything, Senator, you always try to find a way to say it was a past. But when I say it was from the past, it's, oh, you have to apologize. You know, amount of apologies will work. Well, Senator, you can't have it both ways. And you try to apologize, and you try to make petty,
Senator.
phony excuses from Nina Turner, who you got that from. You try to make up those Nina Turner talking points that was the past. You need to own up for your record, as I've owned up to mine. I'm not going to sit here and apologize for it. I've done regrettable things in those times, and now I'm making a new slate, and I don't give a damn about Donald Trump, because he's a clown. And if he's in the debate with me, I will take him on head on, because he is in no way a brainchild when it comes to switching on issues.
All right, Mr. Vice President. Okay, Senator, you get a quick response.
Thank you.
And then,
wow, someone got a little feisty. It seems like he needs a cookie. Well, to say in any way that I haven't owned up to the bad votes I've held, such as that vote on the Brady bill, which I have admitted on multiple occasions was a bad vote. You can go back to the debate against Secretary Clinton, and I said the same. Um, I also have always been an advocate of examining the record, and that you can do that with me, and you can find that I've been consistent throughout my entire record. And you can do that with Mr. Pittman, and you can find that no matter how much he wants to say, yes, it was the past. We have to think about the times. Those were bad votes. We knew they were
But
bad votes
you
then.
voted for it. But you voted for it. That's the problem.
And I admitted that it was a bad vote. And unlike you,
Okay.
hold on.
So why is your apology different from mine?
Mr. Vice President.
That doesn't make sense
Mr.
to
Vice
me.
President, can we
Because
please
you
stop?
you won't admit to the fact that even though we can go on the YouTube right now and find that you stood on the Senate floor multiple times, advocated for the exact provisions that I advocated against at the time, and wrote those provisions and pushed them in a large omnibus bill that included the Violence Against Women Act and a number of other community policing reforms. Um, you wrote it in a way, and you know what you were doing, because Nancy Pelosi and other effective legislators do the same thing, to force
Yeah, thank
every
you for
member
calling me an effective legislator.
to force every uh sorry, well, yeah, I mean, everyone's an effective legislator. I mean, I would
Well, I know I am, because I've got more done than you. So
I'm not disparaging your character as you are mine. I'm just saying that it was a
no,
bad vote.
I'm not disparaging. I'm saying facts. I've done more than you.
Okay, Mr. Vice President, can we please not interrupt?
Okay.
Thank you.
it's clear that you're I mean, I thought you were a lawyer. It's pretty clear what disparaging was. Um, we in my campaign. See, there you go again. There you go again. You get heated, and then you spout out insults and characterizations as arguments. And then when we provide a cohesive or coherent argument against you, you just do the same thing. You laugh or you spit an insult. The American people can see through that. And I think it's why in 36 years of running for president, you've only won 4 delegates. Speaking in terms of the Iowa caucus hasn't happened in 2020 yet. You've only won, or if the Iowa caucus hasn't happened, then you've won 0 delegates in 36 years of running for president,
And
sir.
now you're losing to me. So I guess I've
No,
moved
no,
on up. And now you're
polls
losing
are
to me.
showing me
I've
ahead in
moved on up.
Iowa, so I mean, and it's showing you're in third place. Anything could happen, Mr. Vice President. I think it's clear to the American people who's providing a
Mm.
cohesive argument and who's stumbling on the trail, mixing up their wife and their sister, and fumbling a lot more than I ever have. You're 13 months younger than I am. At least I can hold a sentence on the trail.
All those stumbles, and I haven't had a heart attack. All
Seven.
those
At least
stumbles.
I can hold. At least I can hold an hour and a half speech, and I don't do hour long speeches.
Oh,
I
I'm
I
sure you
have I
do.
do I have had a
I'm
heart
sure
attack,
you
and that's
do.
I admit that. But at
Yeah.
least I haven't.
Yeah. My heart is stronger than yours.
At
That's
least
probably why
I
I'm gonna beat you in the
right.
end.
But at least my brain's stronger than yours, and at least I haven't had an aneurysm in the
At
All
least
right.
past.
my wife
Okay.
is stronger than
Okay.
yours.
Okay.
Okay, my
Okay.
wife is very strong. We don't need to be bringing wives into this.
Well,
At least I
we
know
all know
who
you
my
have
Okay.
wife
screaming
is,
fits.
Senators.
sir. At least I know who
Well,
Senators.
my
yeah,
wife is,
yeah.
Senators.
sir.
Okay.
You met her.
Excuse me.
What did you meet her in Venezuela through Fidel? Is that who you
Okay.
met her through?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Let's
And
just
that's the other point I wanted to make. He
let's
said I had a
let's.
honeymoon with Fidel Castro. That never happened.
You
Uh,
love Fidel. We
I
know you do.
we had a sister city in the Soviet Union. I think it was called Yugoslavia or something like that. I'm not
I'm sure
exactly
you're
sure.
familiar with it.
I'm not sure. And
Shocking.
that's we had a meeting with that city, and you know who was encouraging that program? A communist named Ronald Reagan. He was
Oh,
at this
grief.
at the same time that I was in the Soviet Union meeting with the
Woo,
sister city.
woo.
Ronald Reagan was meeting with Gorbachev,
Oh,
and a number of other
oh
mayors were
my
meeting with
god.
other city leaders to try and encourage peace
Oh my
with the
god.
Soviet Union. You said you're
All right.
laughing at this,
We're
but
going to
this
move on.
you're laughing at this,
We're going to
but
move
it's an
on.
actual program. And in terms of Fidel Castro, I went there and I said that he had a good education system. That's what President Obama said. That's what Vice
Oh
President
Lord.
Biden said. That's what Secretary of State
When?
Hillary Clinton said. And
Oh my
when
god.
the Obama administration was pushing for Cuba reform, I thought we wanted
Please let me respond to this. Please let me respond to this.
I thought we wanted improved relations. No, 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 the moderator wants to move on. I think we've had enough of you calling me a socialist and connected and
Well, you are a socialist.
Okay.
somehow
We're going to move
honeymooning
on.
with Fidel
We are
Castro.
going.
You
We
can't
are
even
going to
You're
move.
define
mentally ill, socialist senator.
sir, you
We
can't
are
even
going to
Mentally
move
define
on.
what
socialist.
socialism
I've
is.
never heard of it. Obama didn't praise a murdering dictator, okay? And
Obama
you
Um.
talk
said
about the
that
education system.
Obama said
You
the
talk
same
about the
Obama
education
said the
system.
same
No,
thing I said.
whatever.
He said
You
that the
talk about the
education
education
system was
system,
good.
but you don't realize that the education system was propaganda to teach kids to do as they were told by the state. You don't
You
mention
don't
that, do
realize
you?
that the education system means
Yeah.
that they have a higher literacy rate than the United
No.
States.
Yeah, a higher literacy rate. Yeah, a higher literacy
Okay.
rate to do what Fidel and his
Senator,
regime wanted,
No, a
of
higher
Senator,
course.
and
literacy
Vice
rate to
President.
read and write.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
We're
no.
going to move on.
Oh my
They
We're
can
going
God,
to
that
move
read
is
on.
and write at
ridiculous.
a higher rate than
And
the
just
American public.
Read
because,
and write for
just
Fidel
because.
Castro for
Okay.
his
Excuse
propaganda.
me.
I don't know how you can
We.
read and write in propaganda,
Okay.
but okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Um. Just because I was asked the fact on that fact check, President Obama, just for the record, did praise the Cuban education system in a
Aww.
speech.
He sure
Aw,
did
do
Regardless,
you need a
honeymoon with
cookie?
him.
Do you need a cookie,
He
Mr.
sure did a
regardless,
President?
honeymoon with him.
There
regardless,
was no
we're gonna
honeymoon with Fidel
Did he
regardless,
take
Castro.
Michelle Obama
regardless,
to? Did he
regardless.
take Michelle
Excuse
Obama to
me,
Venezuela?
Did I
No, he
excuse me,
take
didn't. He
Jane
didn't take him to
Sanders
Cuba.
to Did I take Jane
excuse me.
Sanders to
We're gonna
Cuba?
shut this down if I keep getting interrupted. Be quiet. The the next topic that we are going to discuss is going to be the coronavirus. Vice President Biden, you released a comprehensive plan for this issue, as did Senator Sanders. You both claim that your plans are better than the others. So I'd like to give you both an extensive opportunity to please explain why, because American and just in general society is being upended at the moment. So, as president, we're going to go to Vice President Biden first, and we're going to extend this one to 3 minutes. Why is your coronavirus plan better than your opponent's? And what will you do differently that would make you a better choice to handle this crisis?
Well, this unfortunate crisis, which is what it is, it's unfortunate, but this calls for a steady hand and a trusted leader who can guide the nation through thick and thin, through for better or worse. And I believe that I can do that. First thing we need, my plan is better. We actually work with states to get the resources and the testing desired so that we prevent and stave off this crisis. What does that mean? That means closing schools and while kids are on break, we need to literally rub and baptize every school in alcohol. We need to do everything we can to keep things clean. So when kids get back into school, germs can already be contained because right now what Donald Trump is doing is he's taking this crisis as a joke. And then all of a sudden, when it gets worse, he wants to also play the good guy like he knew it all along, when in reality, he knew not a damn thing about it. And as to why my plan is better than the senators, look, he he makes another pathetic case for Medicare for all, which has nothing to do with this. What we need to do right now is focus on the crisis at hand. We need to treat this like the epidemic, I mean, excuse me, the pandemic that it is. We need to actually cooperate with governors of all 50 states to contain this crisis, and we need to try to find a vaccine as soon as possible. And also, I want to understand where the senator is coming from, but Medicare for all has nothing to do with this. This is a virus that was caused out of the pure blue. This came to us unnecessary. And to just say to make another political case for Medicare for all is not something I'd expect from somebody of his stature, but sadly I'm wrong. So what we need to do is have a calm and steady hand at the wheel. Donald Trump and the senator are not calm and steady. They're uninformed and just throwing out blabber. We need
Senator,
a calm and steady leader, and I will provide that.
Senator, your turn.
Thank you, Ben. Well, this is a crisis, and unlike the vice president, I'm not gonna uh, infer that he doesn't have the steady hand or the experience to lead this country in a crisis. And I would hope he would do the same. Unfortunately, same to me. And unfortunately, he did not extend that same courtesy. Both of us could handle this better than the Orange in the White House, right? This is about our vision for the future. And while I wasn't going to mention Medicare for all in the answer because I don't think this is the place to have that debate, it is in, linked to this crisis. The healthcare industry and how healthcare is provided in this country is inextricably linked to the coronavirus crisis. If we had a single payer system where everybody had, instead of some millions of different private plans, regional plans, and so on and so forth throughout the country, under Medicare, we could more efficiently provide testing and so on and so forth. But I'm pragmatic, and we need to get things done immediately. And what I would do if I was president on day one immediately, or if I was president right now in this crisis, well, I would sign executive orders buying tests for the American people. We would work with my cabinet to find a way to pay exactly for that, and we would distribute those tests to every American that needs it. We would flatten the curve by immediately. We would have immediately, as we found out in China, launched a public service campaign to ensure that everyone knows how to flatten the curve, knows what flattening the curve is in terms of stopping the spread of the disease. We would have locked down some schools and restricted many of the events going on in the country as going on now. And we would have, instead of just saying we're waiting for warmer weather, we would have acted immediately in doing these things. Uh, when we talk about this disease, it often gets uh, forgotten to be mentioned that we also have to find a vaccine or a cure to this disease. And we're under my administration, we would have the necessary research funds, and we would be working with, in close coordination with our allies and our adversaries' science departments to ensure that this research would get done as fast as possible because this is critical to save lives. And we would invest as much money as possible in the billions to ensure that this vaccine was made. Uh, this would be the definition of steady leadership. We would stay calm, and as President of the United States, you're not only a legislative and executive leader who would implement and manage all these plans that I just laid out. You're also a moral leader, and you have to stand and say clearly that we are one people in the face of this crisis. This is not a state crisis. This is a national crisis. This is a global crisis. In a globalized world, the President of the United States of America needs to stand strong and make a clear message to our allies and our adversaries that this is uh, our time. We gotta
Senator,
put
thank you.
we gotta put past petty squabbles and foreign policy squabbles and work together as a united world, as a united country, to solve this national crisis.
Thank
And
you,
that's what
Senator.
steady leadership truly is.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Um, for our last question, uh, I'm just going to ask point blank. Um, it, both of you are locked in a heated race. Obviously, both of you want to be the Democratic nominee. If you are not the Democratic nominee, what will you do to ensure that uh, your opponent is elected as the next president of the United States, if anything at all? We'll first go to Vice President Biden.
Well, thank you. And here's the point: whoever becomes the nominee, we must make it adequate that we defeat Donald J. Trump and remove him from the White House. If my opponent, Senator Sanders, is the nominee, I will practically campaign for him every day of the week. And he might not think I have the stamina for it, which I do, more stamina than him. But if he's the nominee, I will practically campaign my heart out for him. And as everybody may know, I am from Pennsylvania. That is my native home of Scranton. I will practically live in Pennsylvania for the senator. I will help him in any way I can to help defeat Donald Trump because this is about our country and the character of our nation, and it will be on the ballot. So we must defeat Donald Trump. And if I'm not the nominee, I will aid and abet him in every way possible because we must remove this man.
Senator,
Well,
same question to you.
thank you for the question. This election is the most consequential election in my lifetime. That gets said in every election, but for this one, it's fundamentally true. Uh, we have an obligation to not only defeat Donald Trump, but to change the system that led to Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump is a symptom of a larger problem. It's a problem with the way this country has been governed under Republican and Democratic presidents, including President Obama, including President Clinton, President Bush, both of them, and President Reagan. Uh, this is a larger systemic problem, and it's a reason I have served as an independent in the Senate for so long. If we don't change the power dynamics in this country, if we don't denounce the dark money and the large money and the corporations and the billionaires' money, we will never change anything in this country. It's far past time for incrementalism. Incrementalism, not only as a political theory or a political ideology, but as an economic ideology, does not work. It hasn't worked. It has failed us, and it has led to this crises that we are now in. Not only the crises of Donald Trump, but the crises of chaos and divide in this country. And if we're serious about mending that chaos and divide, then it's time that we take on the 1%, take on their interests, and move towards a government and an economy that works with a fair and balanced, or a fair and equitable and balanced power distribution. Uh, it's time that we move past the 1% and the oligarchy in this country making all of the decisions. And if I'm elected as your president, that will be the case. And I will campaign my ass off for any candidate pushing for that change.
All right. Well, I want to thank both of the candidates, or more specifically their representatives, for debating the issues here tonight. I think we had a spirited discussion, to say the least. And I want to thank you both for participating in it. I think um, the viewers who are watching this, uh, if nothing else, got some entertainment out of it. And I want to thank you both for taking time to participate. So, thank you all. And that concludes our mock democratic debate.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank
Did you
you,
call
guys.
me a liar on national television?